Week 0, and it's pretty exciting from a lot of different standpoints, John, because there are some teams that are ranked playing against other teams that are ranked, and that's something you and I talked about a little bit last week. We can hit a little bit more of that again, but we had the Iowa State-Kansas State game, and Dan Campbell, the head coach at Iowa State, I think the world of this guy. He's a heck of a coach, John. He came, I think he was from Toledo originally, but that game was actually pretty exciting. There was a lot of games actually in the week 0 that were going on. Here's the one that stood out for me, and I'm curious what you think. I think this was a bad idea, by the way, by Stanford. You know what Stanford decided to do? They said, hey, you know what? We're going to kick it all off. We're going to go over to Hawaii and play the guys at the University of Hawaii. Well, they did that, and they ran the ball really well, which is not what Stanford's always been known for. They've always been a passing school and everything else, but they can run the ball pretty well. But they dominated the clock, 36 minutes to 24 minutes, because they were running the football against Hawaii. Here's the problem. They lost. And that is not a good start for a school that's going to be in the ACC again, of course, playing some of the big boys out there, John, like the Clemsons and everybody else. And to start off your season in a game that you're scheduling that because you think you're going to win it, that isn't so good. So they're kicking off 0-1. By the way, Thursday and Friday, we got another 28 games on Thursday and Friday of this week. And on Saturday is the big one. So I figured you and I could kind of kick this one around. Arch Manning going up against Ohio State. Do you think game day might be at this one, John, for Saturday? I'm just figuring maybe if Texas number 1 and Ohio State number 3. Yeah. And I think we're going to hear a lot from our buddies that are sitting up there on the desk. I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff. But we talked about this one before, John, the fact that you're number 1 in the country and yet you're going up there as an underdog, which is kind of interesting. I'm still looking at that going, okay, well, Ohio State doesn't really have a proven quarterback. He could end up, whoever they pick, could be great for all we know. But the reality is we got Arch Manning. Everybody's, All-American. Everybody's Heisman Trophy pick. Everybody's this, that, and the other. First pick in the draft kind of a guy. If he's, doesn't stay the full length that he could still stay, he might come out after this year. You never know. He said no, but, I think he can change his mind on that one. That game's going to be fun. What do you think of that game, John? As now that it's closer, does Texas go up there and take it to them? I'm starting to lean on that myself.
They certainly could, Pete. I'll throw out a scenario for you, though, because you've been all over the fact that the 2 quarterbacks at Ohio State are both transfers, Pete.
I don't know if they're transferred. They one of them might be a transfer. I'm not positive on that, so I don't want to say. But
okay, but all they've got to do is have the smarts to hit that wide receiver, because he might be the best wide receiver in football. So if they create a game plan that they can, whoever the starting quarterback is, throw to that kid a lot, he'll make those big plays. That's something that Texas, of course, is going to try to shut down, probably with double coverage on that kid, because he has to be one of, other than Arch Manning, he has to be one of the leading candidates for Heisman.
Yeah.
So I figure he's got to get double covered. That doesn't mean they can stop him. Double coverage just means you got 2 bodies there. And if he can come up and come down with some big plays, Ohio State's got a real shot. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not very enthused, and I think these guys could win by 8-10 in the shoe. But we'll see. By the way, Pete, I'll throw it out there real quick just because it was so studly.
Sure.
When Iowa State, which, as you accurately said, Iowa State played what? Kansas, Pete?
Kansas State.
Mm-hmm. Kansas State. That game, I really liked it because the coach basically was 4th and 3, and he could have gone for a field goal, but instead he basically just said, nope, we're going to convert it and run the clock out. And that's a gutsy move when you're basically in the position that they were in Dublin, Ireland, by the way. So they're ahead 24-21. If they go for the field goal, the other guys could still win. K-State could still win, but instead, they said, nope, we're going to run the clock out. We're going to get a first down right here. And they did. That was gutsy.
That's gutsy. That's gutsy. There's even more ways we could describe that, but we won't. All right. Next up, John, we got the NFL. So here's what I thought for you, because, I always attach you to Colorado and obviously, the Sanders family and that whole thing, right? So Shiloh got cut by the Buccaneers. Now, I think somebody probably will pick the kid up, but he also, part of the reason, I'm not saying this is all of the reason, but part of the reason was he had a confrontation on the field that didn't go so well, got some flags and everything else, and probably not a very smart move. Yeah. So not a great move on his part to put the team into that kind of a position. And, this is preseason and everything else. I mean, everybody knows all the storylines, but he will end up somewhere, because I do think he's a talented kid. But he's going to have to prove to somebody that he can keep his cool. And that will be certainly something that anybody who was thinking about getting him, or somebody else who actually got him, they'll be watching that really closely. Shedeur is the question mark for me, John. And here's why I say that. There's everybody said, well, he there's even somebody out there, Eric Dickerson, who's saying, you know what? This was all done because they basically said, don't draft Shedeur and blah, 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 blah. I don't know what truth or what not about that whole thing, that storyline. But we do know that there was a strange day that the guy, who's supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft didn't go till the 5th round. That still is a puzzling thing. But that being said, John, Dylan Gabriel, who went in the 3rd round in front of him from Oregon, is probably the guy. He's not going to be the starter because they're both rookies and whatever. And if they keep Shedeur, which I do think that they will, or if somebody wants to try to trade for him or something like that. But I'll tell you what, Dylan Gabriel reached out and grabbed this thing. He didn't just get handed it just because he was drafted in front of him. When you take a look at what their numbers look like, John, in the preseason and in some of those, where you're going up against another team in the NFL, Dylan Gabriel was 67% of his passes were completed. He was 25 for 37, and Shedeur was about 58%. That's not terrible. I'm not saying that's awful, but, everybody kind of talks about Shedeur, and they kind of lose track of the guy who went in front of him, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, who's a heck of a quarterback, had a really nice career. I think both these guys will be fighting for it at some point in time. But as of right now, it looks to me like Dylan Gabriel is in front of Shedeur. They got so many quarterbacks on that team right now, John. It's absolutely crazy because they keep getting injuries here, injuries there, bringing in somebody else old, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a really interesting year for Cleveland. I think they're going to be fun to watch, and there's a lot of reasons to watch with all the Shedeur coverage and everything else, but they got a hell of a defense. They got probably one of the best defensive linemen in all of football. And they've got, an offense that can move the ball up and down the field on people. But you know what? We still don't know who the real quarterback is going to be of this team. We really don't. And there are so many on that roster. I know some are injured and all that, but it's unbelievable. What do you think of this? If you're Shedeur, do you want to get traded maybe? Is that a possibility? Or what do you do? Because there's teams that are looking for quarterbacks. Vikings are one of them, by the way, right now.
Well, Shedeur didn't look great. Now, granted, he doesn't have the offensive line that the starting quarterback will have when they go week 1. That's a fact. A lot of these guys are trying to make the roster, just like he's trying to make the roster. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion. Look what happened to his brother. Although his brother might still be on the practice squad, Pete. I saw some of your friends at Fox Sports were saying, yeah, they waived him, but they still like the kid. Yep. And it's, if he clears waivers, we'll put him on the practice squad. So we'll have to see. To your point, though, the way waivers work, folks, you've got 24 hours, I think, right, Pete?
Yep.
And if they pick you up during those 24 hours, your contract is in effect with that new team. If they don't, you're once again a free agent. You could sign anywhere. So he could entertain conversations with Washington or with Detroit or anybody that had a need for a 6th or 7th defensive back, because he doesn't look like a starter right now. I saw what he was doing when he got kicked out of the game against that, what looked like a tight end, Pete, for Buffalo, and they were just punching each other. But, Shiloh was the one that clearly, at least in the clip that I saw, now there could have been some precursor to that clip where the guy jacked Shiloh too. But in that clip, Shiloh was just, the one giving him the business over and over again until finally they went at it, and then the flags went and he's gone.
Yeah.
But he could end up at Tampa. I think Shedeur would be better served playing behind Dylan Gabriel for a while. But again, he did not look good in the weekend game. Did not. He was holding the ball too long. He was getting strip sacked, Pete. He was not, but again, it's not the same offensive line that he would have when he plays in games if he breaks into the starting lineup. But that's still a big if.
And you're right about that. You're so right about that. He had 5 sacks. I mean, that should not happen. That means the offensive line was definitely they're 3s against 3s or whatever they are. Maybe they're backups. Maybe they're 2s against 2s and 3s or whatever. But to give up 5 sacks is far too many. And we're talking about Shedeur Sanders, a guy who probably can manipulate himself around in the pocket pretty damn good, pretty athletic guy. And he couldn't, because I saw some of the clips of it. He was just getting too much pressure. So you can't blame him for everything, and everybody loves to do that. But that certainly was something where he was playing behind an offensive line that was a sieve. And he was getting a hell of a lot of pressure on him, that's for sure.
Yeah, he was. It was like the Bears offensive line starters last year. 68 sacks for Caleb Williams. And it wasn't all Caleb's fault.
No.
But that's a lot of sacks